Hey guys, it's Jay, here with another review video. Before the review begins, I'd like to ask if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and share with others. Without further ado, onto the vid. The episode begins with Shay dodging a beam being shot at him. He then forms 3 Tomas orbs and flings them at Jose. The two then fly towards each other and clash in the middle. We then see Lords Reed Haven and Rai Sato, with Reed watching the fight from a distance away. He then says, "I can confirm this enemy has the same chi as Agaki. Lord Hart is successfully overpowering him. You allowed this, Aldrich, but are you certain he can control what he is becoming?" And Aldrich responds no. Reed then says, "I have sacrificed enough, witnessed far too many of my comrades bleed before me. I trust your confidence in him, but no, I will do anything to protect my children, even if it involves facing the god tier. No, you will not control him. Therefore, if Lord Hart becomes a danger to us all, I will shoot him down myself. I swear it." Rai then says it sounds like a fight and asks Reed if they are up. Aldrich then tells Reed enough and that they share the same fears. He says he knows Shay will not fail them and asks Reed to have faith in him as he does. He then tells Reed to stand down as he is only to observe. He says he was chosen because he looks through the eyes of a father, and the fight has passed them and moved on to their sons. We then see Jose coming toward Shay, but he shoots flames from his shield, forcing him to stop. He then flies to Jose's right side and slashes with Zahara, cutting Jose's arm off. Jose then screams enough as a massive purple hand appears above Shay and forces him to the ground, though Shay swings Zahara and forces the hand to disperse. Jose thinks to himself that Shay is severing his stars before they can explode, and he then says to Shay that he has decided his fate. He will uproot everything standing proudly before him. He then says he will destroy the city and from its ashes create a cosmic realm worthy to be destroyed again and again and again until his anger is sated, and to those who remain, he will be their new god. He also thinks Shay won't be able to cut down the stars in their numbers, as he is nearly covered where he is in the sky with stars. As Shay looks up, Mahalalel says Jose grows desperate, and that in his haste, he has become a fool. He says no mortal ought to claim to be a god, and that they shall end this now while Shay's body still maintain the form. He then says it is time to perform it. We then flash back to Shay during his training as he is placing a rod in the ground. Mahalalel says, "So this is the rod you had the Organization of Code make for you, a conductor. It will allow you to channel your flames for our greatest attack. By focusing impact on one point, you will have utter control over its devastation." He says Leo channeled his flames into physical form by creating weapons, but if Shay can somehow direct it, he can put all his chi into it, and he wonders what they might create. However, one issue remains. The rod is already melting. Shay says, "Thousands of layers of heat-proof metal wrapped around a titanium core, and it can't stand more than 2 applications. The rod is a failure. For this attack to work, I need something that won't bend. I won't put Vinter through it again. His handle didn't make it through our last attempt." Mahalalel says perhaps a talent weapon is the correct route, as Shay's body has survived him while allowing Vinter access to Shay's chi, and if it can survive a talent weapon so great, what's another? Shay says a talent weapon strong enough to channel their flames at their hottest would carry great amounts of chi, and that they'd be wielding a 3rd talent, and he asks if his body will allow it. Mahalalel says yes, and there's room for more, and asks Shay if he has a specific one in mind. As we switch back to the present, Mahalalel tells Shay, "This is the moment you prepared for, and it is up to you to execute it. We may have never done this before, but once we do, it will cost all of my chi, as well as this new form. Once my chi is gone, yours will be revealed. You have successfully hidden your chi behind mine for so long, but soon you may never be able to conceal its weight again. Chi's purpose is to strengthen its talent, but what does the body with the greatest chi pool do with all that energy and no talent? It pours it into survival, Lord Hart. All your chi is in your body. You can survive the combustion of my talent, as your body may very well be unbreakable." He says the chi Shay has been using up until this point has been Ilios' own, but that which he has felt growing within himself is his dormant chi from birth, the chi of Thanatos, and he asks Shay if he is ready for the world to know it, with Shay simply responding yes. Mahalalel then says they must hurry, as Shay's body can't maintain the form much longer, as it is not accustomed to it, and as they discussed in regards to this attack, he only has one rule. Jose says he once thought Code would never understand his grief, the pain of taking the life of your only son by accident, but they seem to be sending boys like Shay to their death pretty often. But that is no mere accident, as Shay serves a monster more hideous than he is. As Shay takes a new stance, Mahalalel continues to speak, saying Shay can only use this attack once physically beneath his opponent, and that this attack kills those who claim to be gods, and that only when they exalt themselves do do they ensure they will fall. Jose then lowers his arm, which starts to send all of the orbs in Shay's direction, and as he does, Ilios screams out, "Now!" Shay then imbues Zahara with the flames of Ilios, and swings her upward in Jose's direction, also saying, "Ilios, sun through moon." This causes damage to the ground around him, and a sun can even be seen next to him. The swing sends flames straight towards Jose, with it hitting him dead on, and the flames reaching past the Earth's atmosphere, even making contact with the moon itself. Reed then says the chairman was wrong, and if what he is detecting is correct, then he should be able to feel this chi where he is. He then tells him to contact the moon base immediately, alert all nations, and gather all of the lords, as we see a chunk of the moon has been severed. Now, on to the highlights. First, I want to start by saying I was completely wrong about how Shay's chi pool operates, as I mentioned in my video regarding Shay not having a second talent, as this episode implies things that fundamentally break down what we know about Shay and his chi. There's a lot to cover, so let's get into it. First, Mahalo says two distinct things that greatly imply he and Shay have separate chi pools. He first says, "This body has survived me while allowing Winter access to your chi," and not too long after, he says Shay has successfully hidden his chi behind his for so long, but soon he may not be able to conceal its weight again. Both of these statements imply Shay has his own chi pool outside of the one Ilios has given him, and they also lead to other conversations about Shay. So I'll come back to the separate chi pool concept in a bit, but I want to take a deeper look at the first statement. This statement implies Shay is not using the chi of Ilios to empower and create the ice attacks from Winter we have seen. This, along with another statement, may suggest Shay's use of Winter is even better than Bjorn's. Mahalalo implies the Thanatos talent has the greatest chi pool, and if Winter is accessing that source of chi when it's being used by Shay, then it would naturally have more chi to pull from compared to when Bjorn used it, as Winter would be competing with the Immortal Hide for chi usage, leading to a theoretical less amount of chi to be applied to it consistently. If this is true, then Winter in Shay's hands would have more chi at its disposal to use to empower his attacks, making his ice stronger than with his prior wielder. Now, in regards to the second statement I mentioned originally, this actually explains why Shay would want the Elder's Mantle. Mahalalo says Shay has been hiding his own chi behind his, and that he may never be able to conceal its weight again. If this is the case, then Shay would need the Elder's Mantle, as it can conceal chi without any difficulty. This may also be something Shay desires, as he could be confused and mistaken as the current bearer of the Thanatos talent. And this leads me back into the concept of Shay having two separate chi pools, as one would be the chi of Ilios and the other would be the chi of Thanatos. You may be wondering how this is possible, but Mahalalo actually tells us how this can be. But before that, a quick refresher. Now, Mahalalo and the Ilios talent are housed inside of Shay's soul, as Aldrich tells us chi comes from the soul, and this should therefore mean that is where talents dwell inside a Kimyo, keeping in mind that removing a talent kills the Kimyo, as you would also be removing their soul in the process. Shay himself is an outlier to this, as he lived after having a talent extraction, keeping the body his original talent granted him, and this body is where Shay's own source of chi is stored, as said by Mahalalel. Now, you may consider this a contradiction to what Aldrich tells us in episode 69, with him saying Shay lacked the chi needed to repair his body, so it took longer to heal. But the definition of lack doesn't just mean to not have it all, but can also mean to not have enough of. Mahalalel adds on to this by saying Shay's chi has been dormant since birth, with dormant meaning temporarily inactive or inoperative. And since he also says Shay's chi didn't have access to the Thanatos talent, it poured itself into survival, meaning it slowly repaired Shay's body from the talent extraction that was done on him. But Shay would have no knowledge of this, and no way to access this chi, hence why it took a long time, as said by Aldrich. Shay not having access to his own chi may be the reason Mahalalo makes the distinction that Winter is accessing Shay's chi and not his own, which could imply there is no way for Shay to directly access his own chi, and he must do so through talent weapons. The reveal of Shay's chi pool also gives way to two more things. The first is the idea of Shay being similar to Agaki, and the second is Shay being the reason Abel's incarnation of Thanatos has a second snake. The reason I say Shay is similar to Agaki is because Brent himself said in the Q&A, the Agaki are like God tier with more chi, and we know they have increased amounts of chi due to Veal's blood. However, Shay has done something similar, but in a very rare and natural way. We know Shay, in terms of Ilios' chi alone, is comparable to Veal, as Ilios himself says Veal has chi equal to his. This means by the end of season 2, Shay has God tier levels of chi, but now we know he has his own innate chi through his body, which, as I said before, means he has a second chi pool, or in simpler terms, more chi, which is what makes him like Agaki, as he has God tier levels of chi like them, but also more chi on top of that. Now, in regards to Shay being the reason Abel has two snakes, this is something I felt was the case since the end of season 2. However, it isn't directly stated in the episode, but we can use the new information about Shay to explain why Abel has two snakes. To start from the beginning, we know the Thanatos talent comes with a snake known as Sybaris, which we saw in episode 24, which is the flashback of the Great Four, and we see older and younger versions of Thanatos with his snake. This is true for Cain as well, as we see he gets his Sybaris when he's a child. And after Abel gains the Thanatos talent, Cain's Sybaris begins to die and Abel forms two eggs, which we now know house two snakes. The reason two eggs were formed instead of one is due to two sources of Thanatos' chi existing in the world at the same time, with that being from Shay and Abel. There are some that have thought Shay could eventually use one of these snakes himself, as one would technically be his. However, I have always disagreed with that idea, and I do even more so now, as Mahalalel makes it clear Shay doesn't have the Thanatos talent, but only its chi, and the snake is tied to the talent, as said by Tadomeki in the season 2 finale. So Shay won't be able to control one of the snakes as he does not have the talent that would allow him to do so. Next, let's focus on talent weapons for a bit. Mahalalel says Shay's body has survived him while allowing Vinter access to Shay's chi, and if his body can survive a talent weapon so great, what's another? And Shay says a talent weapon strong enough to channel our flames at their hottest would carry great amounts of chi, and says he'd be wielding a third talent. This implies two things to me. One, that talent weapons have varying degrees of strength, and two, that Shay sees his use of Vinter as if he possessed his talent innately. Now, we already knew talent weapons had varying degrees of strength, as Asgear could be seen as the strongest talent weapon Andrea has due to its clear destructive capabilities, and before it was given to Shay, Noragiri held that title without a doubt. We also have a talent weapon like Vinter, who would seemingly outclass any of Andrea's weapons. In regards to what Shay says, this may mean that possessing a second talent and wielding a talent weapon is the same thing in concept, which is more than likely why Shay asked Mahalalel if his body can handle wielding a third. This all adds to the idea that Kimyos aren't supposed to have multiple talents, as said by Brent in the Q&A, as wielding too many talents may lead to the body's eventual destruction. So far, it seems as though 2 talents is the max amount a Kimyo is able to wield safely, though like Andrea, it has to be a small portion of a talent, or with a character like Bjorn, who is a god tier with a large enough chi pool to use his own talent and a stronger talent weapon at the same time. This may beg the question of how Andrea and Shay are able to wield multiple talent weapons. Since Shay has a body strengthened by the chi of Thanatos and a large second chi pool because of it, he is able to wield multiple talent weapons through it. Since his body itself lacks a talent to use the chi it possesses, it channels it through the weapons Shay has, such as Vinter and more than likely the Eye of Time. We can think of Shay's body like a second container where multiple things can fit into it, as the space in his soul is already being occupied by the Ilios talent. Now, in regards to Andrea using multiple weapons, it is quite different. For starters, Andrea has the Pandora's chest, which is bound to her, and it may very well be that it is bound to her soul, as it would make sense that something that is bound to the soul can bind other things to the user's soul, keeping in mind that Andrea is the only one who can summon the contents of the chest. However, even if that isn't the case, Andrea herself is never actually seen using more than one talent weapon at a time, and this may be due to her not possessing this space inside of her chi limit to use more than the 2 talents she already has, with them being her talent of weapon mastery and the 5% of Ilios she was granted. So while she may own the weapons, carrying them on her person and actively using them are not the same. Now you may wonder why she's able to use her talent, a talent weapon, and Ilios all at the same time without potentially destroying her body, as they should be seen as 3 separate talents. However, I think the answer to this lies within something I mentioned in my last video, with that being the fact Andrea can impart her soul into her weapons. Last week, I theorized that Andrea's scale abilities stems from the fact she is putting some of her soul into the current weapon she is using, and in turn her body takes on visual attributes of the weapon. I now also think Andrea putting her soul into a weapon uses her talent with a talent of the weapon, which would then make them 1 talent instead of 2, and this is why she is able to use Ilios alongside her use of her weapon, as she would still be in the safe margin of wielding 2 talents, as like I said before, 2 talents is the max a Kimyo can use safely, with there still being specific means for a Kimyo to have 2 talents in the first place. And to finish things off, I want to look at Shay's new attack. Now, the Sun through Moon attack is one that uses 100% chi, which is something Brent mentioned in the Discord himself a while back, and of course it can split the moon in half. To do this, the attack itself has to produce 1.2 times 10 to the power of 29 joules of energy. This is even more energy than the largest nuclear weapon detonated, which had 2.1 times 10 to the power of 17 joules of energy. I do think this attack has the potential to cut the planet in half as well, as Ilios tells Shay he only has one rule when it comes to him using it, and that is he can only use it once he is physically beneath his opponent. Since this is a focused attack that uses all of Ilios' chi, this approach ensures that no overall damage is done to the planet. But let me know what you guys think about that. Based on what Mahalalo says, this attack could also one-shot other god tier and Gaki level characters. However, it seems to be strictly for those who claim themselves as gods. Mahalalo says only when they exalt themselves do we ensure they will fall. Exalt has many definitions, but in this context, it seems to be the literal act of someone raising themselves above Shay, and they are doing so as they feel they are above him in power. So if one of the god tier or Gaki started to see themselves higher than they are, they would raise themselves into the sky and give Shay the opening that ensures their defeat. But that's just how I see it. The actual name of the attack may be a sort of callback in new response to Veyal's Blood Moon technique. This actually makes sense, as Shay at the time of season 2 did not have a means of dealing with the Blood Moon technique himself, unlike his mentor. And since Bjorn tells Shay he must defeat Veyal in his lifetime, Shay will more than likely encounter and face Veyal again this season. And if a scenario were to occur where Veyal uses the Blood Moon, Shay would have no means of stopping it, which would lead to his death and the death of others. But with this new attack, Shay has the perfect counter for the Blood Moon, as it is in a raised position, and the Sunfire of the Ilios talent is a weakness to Veyal. So it makes sense when such a talent, when used at its hottest and focused in a single direction, would destroy that attack with ease. The context of how the attack was being developed also reveals two things, with that being why Shay changed Ventr's handle and why Shay desires Zahara. Now, the reason Shay changed Ventr's handle was out of necessity, as its original handle broke during the training for this attack's development. Shay seemingly implies the attack could destroy Ventr as well, but he may be able to circumvent this with the use of his blue flames. However, unlike Ventr, Zahara is fully capable of handling the magnitude of this attack, and this should be possible due to the sheer amount of chi she has, which seems to be more than Ventr. And since she is a talent boosting talent weapon, she should be more structurally sound, as if she wasn't, she couldn't handle the boosting of talents, and anyone who wanted to imbue their now stronger talent through her. I also want to look at the potential after effects of the attack. Now, when Shay actually swings Zahara, we see the ground around him changes and resembles that of lava. This means that while the attack itself is directed upward, the sheer heat it produces affects the area around it while it's being used. The attack also cuts the moon, as shown in the last panel of the episode. This could also have effect on the planet itself if the moon were also to leave the Earth's orbit. The moon itself and its gravitational pull is responsible for the ocean's tides, which also affects marine life and coastal ecosystems. So if the moon went away as a result of this attack, the ocean would have more consistent low tides, and some species rely on the tides for feeding, breeding, and migration. The lack of tides would also change erosion patterns, leading to some coastlines potentially being more stable, while others erode faster due to unchecked wave action. This unchecked wave action could lead to the destabilization of an underwater slope, and it could indirectly contribute to conditions that may cause a landslide-generated tsunami. Not to fear though, as we have a character that is almost made to help deal with this problem, which is Vadic Adelmar, the current bearer of the Okeanos talent. If the moon were to slowly leave the Earth's orbit as a result of this attack, Vadic should have the potential to deal with all of the problems that comes with it, as his control over the Earth's water is very grand, and at his strongest he may be able to regulate the oceans and the water of the entire planet at once. Though if nothing of the sort happens, we can disregard this. This is by far the best episode of the season, and it might even be the best episode of the series so far, as I don't think an episode has given us so much lore and things to discuss. Not to mention, we also got a moon level feat, which means some of the other higher tier feats, such as Kevin's star feat or Jose potentially being able to destroy the planet, are truly in the realm of possibility, and all Brent has to do is draw those higher tier feats when necessary, so we can quiet all the naysayers. I also enjoy this episode because it fundamentally breaks down what I thought I knew about the series thus far, and forces me to revisit my prior ideas and thoughts on certain subjects. So in a way, my video on Shay was wrong and right at the same time, but I'll get into those specifics when I make a video on it when the season is over. This episode also proves what I mentioned at the end of my 125 review, which is that Shay and Mahalalel had a conversation about Shay taming Zahara, which is good because it shows how Mahalalel was an active part of Shay's training, helping him figure out things he couldn't. This also brings up the question of what other conversations did they have during the 8 months, and will we see any any other flashbacks to them like we did this episode. In regards to Reed, I'm not gonna lie, he was kinda wilding at the start of the episode, and his reaction seems almost unprompted, especially when you consider the fact that in episode 115, Lord Mikhail has no real worries when it comes to Shay and the path he is going down, though Reed's interaction with Aldrich can imply that God tier may not always see eye to eye, or even talk for that matter, and may potentially fight one another over a disagreement, similar to what we saw with Masato and Mato in the beginning of episode 113. I also enjoyed the fact that we got to see Reed's eye, as I always felt his eye had something to do with his talent, as up until this point it hadn't been shown in any of the panels he was in, and considering what he says to Aldrich, his talent is more than likely a range type. And lastly, I want to put a spotlight on Addy_84's comment from the official episode's comment section. They highlight the parallel between Shay and Jesus going into their respective wildernesses and confronting their forms of sin and temptation, eventually overcoming it and being strengthened by the Holy Spirit. This is a comment I truly enjoy, as it points out an amazing parallel, which is one I miss myself. So shout out to you, Addy, for putting those pieces together. And let me know how you guys feel about a sort of comment of the week like this, where I put up a comment from the actual episode itself that brings up something I might have missed or all around enjoy. But anyway, that's the video, guys. Let me know your favorite part of the chapter was in the comments below, as well as how you feel about the things I mentioned in the highlight section. Don't forget to read the actual episode for yourself, and be sure to like it as well. And I will see y'all in the next one.